sink. There is a very common reason why people feel stuck nowadays. People do everything they can to get better. They journal, they go to therapy, self-discipline, exercise, self-help routines, all these things. However, something will still feel heavy in their life. Something that no matter how much work they put in, it keeps resetting them back to zero. And sometimes it might not be because they're doing anything wrong. It's simply because they're trying to heal in the same environment that broke them. Environments shape us far more than we'd like to admit. Matter of fact, I'm not talking about just the situation that you're placed in, not just the location that you're placed in. I'm talking about the people and the routines around you on a day-to-day basis. Even the silence and the expectations that you've gotten used to. Healing isn't just about what you do and how that changes you. Instead, it's about where you do it. It's about who you're around when you do it. And it's why you keep going back to the same places that taught you to abandon yourself in the first place. Sometimes the pain isn't the hardest thing to heal from. Instead, it's the pattern that you're trying to break out of. It's the constant rewiring of your mental or your brain simply just to make it through. It's teaching yourself to stay quiet, to keep the peace, because you never get any of that in the common environment that you're in. Lowering your standards to those people around you just because you were told that your dreams were too much or they were fucking crazy or extremist. As well as pretending that things don't bother you just to avoid being labeled sensitive by those around you. Those aren't simply bad habits. They are bad habits, but they're not just bad habits. They're also survival instincts. And the catch is that the place that taught you those strategies, if that place never changes, why should you? If the environment that you're surrounded in, which set you up to be, surrounded by these bad habits, stays the same, so are you. You're going to stay the same. Imagine trying to recover from burnout from a job that still demands you 60 hours a week without lowering any hours. Imagine trying to find confidence while living with people who tear you down every single time you speak up. Imagine trying to develop self-respect in a relationship where you're only rewarded for your silence. It's contradictory. It's an oxymoron. It's impossible to do these things. It's not healing, nor is it maintenance. It's simply surviving well enough to function, but never long enough to breathe and have a moment of, wow, I'm finally happy, I'm finally free. People like to believe that they can out-discipline their surroundings. People like to believe that they're strong enough to overcome anything that comes their way simply if they try hard enough. However, that mindset is the mindset that keeps a lot of people trapped. That mindset leaves them to think that leaving itself is a weak thing. That, in reality, walking away is sometimes one of the most powerful things that you could do. One of the forms of strength that makes a difference. These environments around you want you sick. There is very many environments in the world that will literally want you to lose. Not simply because people are evil in those environments, but because they're used to the version of you that was small. They're used to that version of you which never spoke up, the version of you which over-explained everything and apologized for taking up space or simply doing something. And once you start to grow and you start to unlearn and you start to back out of these bad habits and these shit traits, once you start demanding more out of yourself, other people will say, wow, you've changed so much, as if it's a bad thing, Of course people are going to change. Sometimes it's even a good thing. No, most of the time it's a good thing. Don't allow the people around you to tell you that, you've changed, what a bad person you've become, simply because your goals are too high for them. The more whole you become as a person, the less compatible you are with what broke you in the past. You'll genuinely start to think that you in the past was a different person. Like you won't believe that was you. If you look back at yourself from 5-10 years from now, you'll be like, why the fuck was I doing the things back then that I would never do now? What a weirdo I was. And if you do that, well, wow, good for you, man. You've grown, you've changed, you've understood your errors, and now you've become a better person. We're simply trying to get it to the point where you can do that within an hour, or not an hour, well, within a year as opposed to a decade, you start to notice that, the conversations around you will drain you. You'll start to notice that the rooms around you will become anxious even before you walk in. The people who only come around to you, the people who only talk to you when you're down, will disappear the moment you start to rise. And I think that tells you something, that if they're not willing to follow you on your journey of success, why should you stick around them? Simply, all they're going to do is drag you down, like the crab in the bucket example. Sometimes you have to learn to leave, and you have to learn that you're leaving not because you hate them, but simply because you love yourself too much to want more. You love yourself so much to the point where you want more. You want more peace, and you want more honesty, and you want more space to be exactly who you are destined to be, without any guilt, without any tiptoeing around people, without any filtering your soul and the way you speak, just to be digestible to that crowd, to those people. And the hard truth is that you cannot do that where the wound was created. Even if the pain has faded from that wound, the patterns are still baked in. There still might be a scab. It might be so much easier for that part of your body to get hurt again. Your body will remember how it feels to be silent within that room. And your nervous system will still react the exact same way when that one name pops up. Maybe in a notification on your phone. Maybe you hear it over, I don't know if I can hear someone talking about it. Your mind will still walk on eggshells every single time, even when no one's watching. And that is not healing. Instead, that's re-traumatizing yourself simply because you're surrounded in the same environment that traumatized you the first time. And I do understand, walking away does feel overly dramatic, but staying in a place that asks you to betray yourself every single day is so much worse. That is slowly eroding yourself. That is slowly making you become a worse and worse person. That is the death by 1,000 quiet cuts. That's, I think it's a Chinese philosophy, talking about how small little actions, they used to torture people by putting 1,000 tiny little cuts and letting them bleed out. But basically, metaphorically, it means these small little actions or the tiny little cuts in yourself will eventually build up to the point where you become dead, or in this sense, you become unrecognizable and you move so far away from your dreams. You don't owe yourself to any other person just to stay small, just so they feel comfortable. You don't owe yourself, you don't owe your healing to other people just so they can grow. You don't owe your peace to a place that never respected your pain. You don't owe anything to anyone else but yourself. The environment you're in matters. That is a 100% fact. That is a truth. If you plant a healthy seed in toxic soil and you don't water it and you don't give it any light, no matter how strong or how much potential that seed has, it will not grow. However, if you change the environment, if you change the soil, the light, the water, that same seed will start to grow exactly how it should have in the first place. You weren't broken, you were simply misplaced in the wrong soil. All you have to do is change that soil and go to a soil, an environment which supports your growth. Put yourself in a position where people around you will listen, in spaces that allow peace and stillness, in routines that will nourish you rather than drain you. And everything will begin to change. The second you change to that healthier soil, everything will change. You start realizing that change isn't supposed to feel like a war. Instead, it's supposed to feel like returning to a healthier version of yourself, to a version of yourself that existed before the world told you who you were meant to be. So if you're so tired of spinning your wheels for the people around you, if your progress resets the moment you come home or the moment you get back to work or re-enter that friend group, pay attention to that. Maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's simply that you've been trying to bloom in a space which only knows how to bury things. And I'm not saying that change has to be an easy process which you can do overnight, but it is a necessary process. You have to change at some point, otherwise you're going to stay docile your entire life. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with answers. Instead, it might begin with distance. So understand you cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Not because you're weak, but simply because you finally respect yourself enough to stop trying.